Hello, Todd. Welcome to the show. I am so happy you're here, and reading your bio makes me so happy, even more so, because I have such reverence for our vets. And I just think I can't even explain the gratitude that I have for people who serve our country. So thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Appreciate the invitation.
You're welcome. So, what I'd like to do is start talking about your story and how you got into doing what you are doing, and talk about that in more depth after we get going. So, please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into, going from the SWAT team and canine training into Pure Life Organics. How does that work?
Yeah.
How do you go from one to the other?
It's not a linear transition, I assure you.
No.
So yeah, I mean, when you come through a profession or you're involved in a profession, at least, the way I approach it is the requirement to have physical health is kind of at the foundation of being effective, to serve our community, our country. So I've always been a massive proponent of staying fit. And in particular, when you work night shifts, and these variable schedules and long hours, and the more you can stay on top of fitness, nutrition, sleep, the better you are at serving the community. But at least, when that's all said and done, you can retire and still have a life afterwards, because we all know that oftentimes in public service, you spend 30 years serving and 1 year retired, and it's all said and done. So it was really, life was fine, and you can kind of beat yourself up through your 20s. You start to feel it a touch in your 30s, where like, oh, I didn't recover from my block as well as I normally do. But then by the time I hit my 40s, I was like, man, these night shifts are legitimately killing me. And so my wife, also police officer, 27-year veteran of the force, she had been, early on in her career, had been in a pretty significant car accident after a high-speed pursuit. And, almost 6 feet tall, collegiate athlete, basketball. And then, after her accident on the job, she would punish herself, to stay fit and healthy, going out and trying to do runs still. And eventually her back just had completely worn away to where she was in constant pain, where she couldn't even stand for 5 years. And now you couple that with hormones shifting, as we progress through age, she just legitimately she could go down to like 600 and 700 calories and just punish herself in terms of calorie restriction, just anything to attempt to lose this weight that just kept creeping on, and suddenly she was about 35, 40 pounds overweight, and over her own ideal weight, and somebody who's tall like she is, you carry it well. But even for her, she was like, I am having trouble moving. I know you're very well versed on hormone issues, in particular thyroid. Her thyroid issues were well documented through her blood work, and she couldn't exercise. She was in too much pain all the time, and it was just a non-starter for her. And so I became very deeply involved in researching natural remedies, because I mean, she could get prescriptions thrown at her left, right, and center, all with incredible ranges of sort of peripheral dysfunction that would be caused. So whether she was ending up with migraines, or whether she was, having medication to try and help her sleep and those kinds of things, but waking up with that sluggishness and that hangover and all of these different things. So I went through a pretty detailed analysis of organic remedies, and put together what I thought would be a very effective organic tea to help her start to reduce inflammation. And then we really looked at nutrition, and we needed to actually increase what she was eating every day to get her
Mm-hmm.
body functioning properly. And checked in with how that nutrition was being set up from a macronutrient perspective through each day. And then we really work from a foundation of starting off your day with this tea, and then you would eat 2 or 2.5 meals per day, but good size, because that's just what worked for her. And she started to see really profound results, and to the extent where it was over 54 pounds lost, and a complete reversal of the issues that she was facing when you start to have excess weight with your joints and you're still trying to be active and all that kind of stuff. And we're both 49 now, and she doesn't do the hard pounding type of activity, but she can exercise again in her back. She can sleep was the biggest thing that back pain was impacting. But to go through this whole transition from the life in the military and being a SWAT team leader into researching organic remedies for health, it's not a normal transition, but man, it's been the most powerful, and it really kind of underpins my desire to serve mankind in a very different way, right? We still have that service oriented, but I want people to enjoy health, because if you don't have it, as you know, and as your listeners know, you can have the best life, but if you're not healthy, if you can't wake up and enjoy that day, or if there's some chronic nagging health issue you're facing daily, it really detracts from your quality of life.
It really does. And, I have so much I can say about this. There's just so many things racing through my mind with that story. But the one that stands out the most is being super proactive for, coming out of a horrible situation with your wife's health, and for her to feel so much pain that she can't even sleep, and just feeling the burden of all the changes that our bodies start to go through, and then feeling helpless. But like you said, you can have medications thrown at you in every direction, but there's no real education on telling us
Yeah.
how we can actually help ourselves with food, which is something that goes into all of our cells and all of our body's systems and cycles to make us function and function well. And our body wants to do that. And what I see, whether I'm in the grocery store, at the airport, or wherever you see people, that it seems like, and I say this without judgment, that they've given up on their physical health because they don't know that you can do something different about it.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and it doesn't have to be, it can be just as easy as, going to a fast food restaurant or whatever. It doesn't have to be this, unfortunately there's such a misleading information that it seems hard, and it can't be easy and fun and enjoyable, which the man, when you start to feel good, there's nothing that feels better, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. And when people haven't seen the other side of it yet, of the good side, there's some complacency that happens because they don't know what they don't know.
Sure.
And they've just sort of gotten used to feeling terrible, and that becomes their normal. And it's just out of the realm of their possibilities. It can't even fathom that it could be different.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, for my situation too, I was just kind of tenacious and was just not going to accept that this is my new normal. And I was told, this is your new normal, just get used to it. And I'm like, no, I'm 30 something years old. I'm not, this is too, I'm much too young to feel this damn old, as the song goes. And I just couldn't stand that, because what am I going to look like at 70? What am I going to feel like at 70?
Yeah, there's no reason for people to accept, when I mean, the human body and the human mind is such an untapped reservoir of power that, the ability to transform from one state to another really is about a choice, both mentally and physically. It just is surrounding yourself with that right information, the right um, group of people, the right ability to make the choice one way or the other. And I mean, even when we talk about information and we talk about the choices around food, for example, and nutrition, food, people really, at its core, food is just information. That is
Hmm.
all that it is going into. If you want your body to do a certain thing, you have to give it the information to respond in a particular way. And once you learn from a very basic level that this type of food does this, or this type of food can help you do this, it just becomes easy to make that choice. And it doesn't have to be you know confusing. It just needs to be clearly outlined and then accessible, right?
Hmm.
That's sometimes the difficult thing for people too. It's because of their lifestyle and because of the way we are uh, conditioned, in North America, really. It's far easier to make a choice that's going to impact us negatively than one positively.
Hmm. Yeah, it's far easier, and it's set up that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of by design, it seems like. And I think
Whoa, now you're talking conspiracy.
I know, it just seems like it's just everything is right there at the checkout aisle, and people,
Sure.
it's that instant gratification, and we are programmed as humans to want what we want when we want it, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's just too easy to
Yeah.
make poor decisions all the time.
Dopamine's a powerful drug,
Hmm.
right? Like
Right.
it just is, from the way we view media, to the way we choose food, to exercise, all those kinds of things. I mean, I wish sometimes I could get people, or create a situation where people had that um, hormonal cascade post workout that just floods your body with all the things that feel good.
Hmm.
You would literally be excited to get up every single day to do your exercise or eat something that's amazing, and just feel good, because it really does boil down to those chemicals in the brain that tell us to go enjoy that thing again, or do that
Hmm.
thing again, right?
And I think most people get a glimpse of that, whether it's when they change how they're eating, they start to realize, this makes me feel better. I feel so much, lighter, or, whether they're losing weight or not, they just feel better. They have more energy. They're sleeping better. But the problem is making it stick and keeping it be that way most of the time, even if you want to use the arbitrary 80-20 rule with
Yeah.
regard to choosing the foods, the best foods most of the time, 80% of the time. And if you, kind of fall off the wagon 20% of the time, you're going to be healthier for it. That's probably a good goal to
Yeah.
start with. But when people get just a little glimpse of that, they can understand that there is a difference. And then sticking with it is the other hard part I know that makes my job harder for
Sure.
people, to help people along, because there's so much that goes into play with
Yeah.
that, and everybody's biochemistry is different, and kind of working with that. So how, just on that vein, with your wife and her going through this, and she, very stressful job, and going through these changes with her body and feeling horrible, and the chronic back, I've had chronic back pain from not an
Yeah.
injury, and it's miserable.
Yeah.
It's awful. And so when someone is going through that, how did she have the staying power to go through it and lose 54 pounds?
Yeah, and this is the interesting dynamic when you're husband wife. I have said to her multiple times, through our life when we undertake something. I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, don't eat that or don't do that.
Right.
I'm just here as a vessel of information. I'm not going to make that choice for you. But to your point, to make it, there was two things that kind of evolved and kind of underpin the evolution of Pure Life Organics. Really, it was when we started making the tea. It had to taste good, and so from a compliance standpoint, you can't have somebody do something that, if it tastes like they're drinking a sock, like
Right.
they're not gonna do it.
That's how I would describe a lot of teas. I'm not gonna lie.
Totally. Not, it just isn't happening. So I had to make it taste good, and that was the first thing. And taste is a very subjective requirement to try and meet, but and then it had to be easy, and at first it wasn't. So I was making this tea, and I absolutely destroyed our kitchen with turmeric. Like we had
Yeah.
it was like a Vitamix, and it just dyed yellow, and so I caught trouble for that. And so that was really, I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna have to find a way to do this, make like batches of it at a time, and then eventually we found a way to get it manufactured, which was the big step. And so going back to your point on how do we keep people compliant, are for that protocol in particular, the tea tastes very good, and it's very easy. If you can boil water in the morning, you can drink the tea, and it literally had to get to that. But the follow-up to that is that you are satiated throughout the day and you feel like you have the energy. So those meals that you're eating also need to be a good makeup that kind of is some food that you enjoy and food that keeps you feeling full, so that by 7:00 at night you aren't chewing the buttons off the couch kind of thing, trying to get anything to eat. So that was how we found that it worked for her. It was, and I never want to say easy, but it was very manageable. It has to be kind of good for people who lead that busy life, or have to be certain places for long periods of time. All of those different components, right?
So you talk about how she, these changes that you all made, and you destroyed the kitchen and, all those types of things. And, she resolved her symptom. Resolved them, right? That's amazing, especially with back pain from an accident, from a high-speed chase situation. I can't imagine the impact on her body physically, mentally with that. But so you go through this process, and you talk about her losing 54 pounds. Now I will tell you, and I'm sure you know as well, that when people say, I want to lose weight, they want to lose it in a minute. They want this probably crept on over years for your wife and for most other people, and to lose it overnight, or in this, 20 days or whatever this big promises you see in different commercials and that kind of thing. I don't have to give me specifics or whatever on that, but can you talk about the process versus that, it wasn't this miracle thing that happened overnight?
Yeah, it wasn't overnight. And you get this initial metabolic reaction is probably the best way to frame it, where it does start quick, and that was kind of one of the nice things where people are like, oh my, this is the and sure, it starts that way, but you want to build good habits, and you want to build something that's sustainable. So it was inside of 6 months where she was down 28 pounds. And then since the process to we're going on years now, since, because this was back 2016 when we first put her through this. She's still absolutely down the exact same weight. She has a glass of wine on the weekend. I don't want to, kind of, throw in these unrealistic, if you can drink on the weekends, but her understanding the education around how to eat and removing inflammation from her body, all of these things that cause metabolic dysfunction. She once we got those under control, she could actually live the life that is normal, where it feels less rigid. But the initial weight loss was certainly quicker than the FTC would like.
Right.
The FTC is kind of, hey, anything more than 2 pounds a week, and you can't say that. But it was particularly in the first 3 to 4 weeks, was very rapid, and then she tailored off, and then almost, because I was like, don't go, you don't want somebody going too crazy, because
Right.
this was still unknown really how it was all gonna unfold. And so I wanted, it's not good enough, and you point that out properly. It's not good enough just to have a rapid weight loss and not be able to sustain it. And so that was the biggest thing with her, and any of the people that come through our company and our programs, and they have to be able to live a quality life for the long term. And so rather than kind of being focused on that rapid sequence that happened, here we are 4 years later, still off, because of being involved with the process of creating good habits, and just really understanding how your dietary choices on a daily basis dictate your long-term health.
Well, and I think it's important to point out too that, she, like you said, there's rapid weight loss in the beginning, and the first 6 months was about, roughly half of what she lost.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just continued, and it's been maintained with some flexibility on the weekends, however you want to say that. And I think what people need to understand is that in the beginning stages, when you're healing and restoring so that you can optimize your body to be able to release the weight, that there is more leeway down the road, that you don't have to never have a glass of wine in your life again, because you start doing something. And people are very much black and white with things, and either on or off a program. And
we live the most normal life. Like it's ridiculous. Like, we're not a couple that goes to our friends and doesn't have crackers, cheese, and meat and that kind of stuff. Like, we just aren't those people. We live the most normal life possible. But I'm not having 4 plates of crackers, cheese, and and I'm not doing it every night. And so there is that flexibility that is absolutely required to achieve balance. And I say this in most things, and I think we would see this throughout the world right now, is balance is found in the center. It's not found in the extremes. And if you want to have a life that isn't polarizing, or reducing sort of the quality, you just have to find that balance. And you can, particularly around nutrition, you can tell pretty quickly when you're going a little too far one way. Your body just instantly feels different. You're sleeping differently. Your clothes fit differently, all of those things. And then, so when you have a good understanding of how the nutritional choices are impacting you, you can just pull it back and, rethink it for 10 days or a week or whatever, till you kind of get that feeling where you're like, oh yeah, okay, now I'm back to work. And that doesn't mean hopping on the scale every day. That means just, this is how your body feels when you're optimally healthy. This is how you feel when it starts to kind of go this way. You're like, ooh, I better get back to the center there, and find that happy medium, that happy balance again.
And it's important to point out that the number on the scale. And if you're starting your program and if the number on the scale isn't constantly going down,
Yeah.
that's not the only source of your success on what you're doing. You have to really, really dig into your symptoms and be very mindful. And people, again, because they've been feeling terrible for so long, I think don't even recognize them.
Yeah.
So I always coach my people to really, really understand how they feel. I don't care if they've been feeling it for 10 years or 20 years. Write it down, make note of it, bring it
Oh
to the
yeah.
forefront so they can see that maybe the number didn't go down this week, but
Yeah.
maybe that symptom is so much better this week. That's a
Well, that
huge
was one
win.
of the things I had to, my wife would hop on the scale and, particularly around menstruation, and water retention and those kinds of things. You can vary 5 pounds in a day.
Hmm.
Like it's easy to go like 5 pounds up, and people just completely come unglued
Yeah.
because the scales show I gained 5 pounds after I drank this tea. Well, you probably didn't. Where are you at in your menstrual cycle? How much water did you drink? Did you happen to have a salty dinner?
Hmm.
Like it's just all of these factors that people just, once you understand that, it can impact you so frequently, and on such a small scale that if you're really going to use the scale, hop on once every 2 weeks if that's the measure you want to use. It's for me, it's more about look and feel, and am I sleeping good? Is my
Hmm.
performance okay? Can I stay focused on what I'm doing? All those kinds of things.
Hmm. Yeah, those are huge, factors of living, living
Yeah.
your best life. You need to be able to do all those things. And
Yeah.
we oftentimes push those aside for the number on the scale to be that ideal number.
Totally.
So you talked about the hormone changes with your wife, and part of that, from what I gathered, was some thyroid issues
Yeah,
that
for
were
sure.
showing up. So what was happening with that? Because obviously with people that I work with most of the time, and myself, I'm always looking at thyroid numbers and looking at
Yeah.
conversion. And
Yeah.
so how did that look for your wife?
So this is the one of the important things that I would say, if you have the opportunity to get a blood panel done, you should get it done. And even um, thyroid in particular, I have found that people that have a thyroid dysfunction, one way or the other, oftentimes they only get a test for T4. And what they really need to understand is the T3 number and how T3 is being converted. And oftentimes their blood panels won't get that. And so they'll just get popped on Synthroid, let's say, or whatever
Hmm.
to crank up that metabolism, but they don't have the T3 that's even converting properly. And obviously, given your expertise, I'm happy to defer to really provide people that education around that. But that's an important number.
It's a very important number, and I'll explain that a little bit further for the listeners. So, kind of the basic number that's typically drawn if you're not someone who has a known thyroid condition, and if they're just doing a baseline check, they're going to check for a TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, and sometimes they'll do a T4 total, and that tells us very little actually with how our thyroid is actually functioning. And
Yeah.
so, yes, I totally recommend people get an expanded thyroid panel, at least as a baseline, one time, get the whole thing,
Yeah.
which is TSH, free T4, free T3, get the two antibodies checked, the TPO and the antithyroid globulin. And then also a reverse T3 would be amazing, because if you're under tons of stress, if you're not sleeping properly, your T4 that should convert into T3 oftentimes just gets shunted into reverse T3 because of this high level of stress. So your T3 is not helping you out, which is considered the more active form of thyroid. So that's why we have to have a whole picture to really understand and optimize our everything. Really, our thyroid optimizes everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No question. And that was so once we understood that, that not only was and it's the unfortunate side of the medical profession. I don't think, the testing is individualized well enough. You just get this blanket, hey, here's what is recommended by the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and this is what everybody gets. And
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, it doesn't address anything, and people say, I've already had my thyroid tested. You probably haven't. You
Mm-hmm.
probably haven't, and it could literally unlock all of the problems that you've been facing, or the solution to all of the problems that you've been facing when you have that good information.
Mm-hmm. And I've had people tell me with, going through my thyroid cancer and having abnormal numbers for so many years. I mean, prior to that, my TSH fell in the normal range, but at all the symptoms, all of them that you could, the people associate with thyroid conditions. And since then, I've had so many people tell me that they're struggling with symptom A, B, and C, and they're hoping they have a thyroid problem
Yeah,
that can explain their symptoms, therefore they can get help. And
yeah,
I get that. And
yeah,
I get that, for many conditions, if you're not getting a diagnosis and not getting help, then it's hard to move forward. And so that's where, for me, nutrition was the key. That's what changed my life, and my functioning of my life was looking into, real whole food nutrition based on a lot of things that you're talking about, the macronutrients,
yeah.
balancing things out, optimizing what you're eating. And I didn't find a tea that that I liked, back then. But I'm gonna get yours. But it's those things that people need to have as tools in their arsenal to improve their health.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I just, again, like, I think that it is so important to have a, at least some kind of understanding or a diagnosis when you're facing, some type of challenge that, you keep, and you continue to try things, nothing works, try things, nothing works. And you engage the medical community for answers, and unless you get that really good doctor, who's just on top of his patients or her patient's health, then oftentimes they'll just, nope, keep going back. Got this answer, got to go this one. And those are often, you have to hunt for those people in the community. Otherwise you just get as general a practitioner as possible. But it's, you said it very well. People hope that they have something, because all they want is to find that solution. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we have to be the masters of our own health, and without saying that's not good enough, or without being educated even to know what to ask for. That's why, there's peripheral professionals out there in these coaching groups who are very good physical trainers, who have a nutrition background. Often these conversations will still, be like, oh, that seems weird.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get you somewhere. You need to ask your physician about having XYZ done, because that just does not sound normal. And so you have to engage people and continually be questioning when things just aren't um, shaking out the way that they should be, providing, of course, that you are also doing all the other things, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to approach it and be honest with yourself. Are you doing all the things? If you just want the quick fix and a Synthroid prescription, which a lot of people do,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to end up with longevity, right?
Right.
You need a full, um, not just diagnosis, but a complete approach to solving this for the long term.
Yeah, and there are those people, and I remember being very, very jealous of those people that would get a, prescription of Synthroid or whatever, thyroid medication, and it solved all their problems. It really
Yeah,
did. They, I guess mine were more severe symptoms at the time, you know, even outside of the scope of the cancer part of it. And I just remember feeling like, oh, why, that's so simple. Why can't it be? Why is it so hard for me? And hoping it would be like that. There are those people. I feel like that's not who's drawn to work with me. That's not obviously the people that I work with in the first place, because I want people that are like me in that, you know, they hit their rock bottom and they think there's nothing else they can do, but there is. And so I'm wanting to educate them on that. But so yeah, I found myself thinking those people that could do the quick fix of Synthroid, or, you know, there's other quick fixes out there too that aren't medication, and you think, oh, that's perfect for you, but that's not how it is. And I'm finding for the majority of people, I don't think that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And that's not how we're educated when we go to our medical professionals. Typically, they're, you know, we're educated on the quick fix, not on, you know, the other things that we're trying to do for people.
Exactly. You know, and in some ways it's fortunate because you can be passionate about it in a much deeper way than the system might be.
Right, exactly. So you talk about the three pillars of health being sleep, movement, and nutrition. We've talked about nutrition. We've touched a little bit on sleep, but is there more that you could add to the sleep
Oh
conversation?
man.
It's a
Well,
huge one.
this is
Um,
the starting point for us, you know, where when we're really looking at somebody's um, ability to do the thing that they want to do, whether it's, you know, improve performance, whether it is lose weight, whether, you know, it's just feel good. We always look at their sleep first,
mhm,
and have them, you know, track just how they felt, how they have been sleeping. In most cases, without question, their interrupted sleep patterns. And we know that, you know, restorative sleep is that slow wave sleep that happens. Um, not achieving that, or if you're continuously broken, you will never get into that state of sleep. And the physiological downstream effects of not achieving restorative sleep, both from a mental perspective, as well as just your human physiology, you will have excessive, if not impossible, amounts of problems to try and lose weight, but just your overall health and function are severely decreased. And in fact, like it's, you know, looking back and, you know, you might just remember the 80s, but I remember the
oh,
80s.
I remember the 80s.
You know, you look at at how certain nutritional profiles and were being villainized, and how exercise was the only solution to anything, and sleep had never even been
Mhm,
raised. And you know, until you get into these elite level performers who start with sleep, that is, you know, that's the baseline for sort of building out, you know, these very intense training programs and peaking them for, you know, say Olympic level fitness, that kind of stuff for pro sports. It's the number one thing. And so when we look at it from just a simple health perspective, and regenerating muscle, or even burning fat, there's really good studies out there, and I know people get bored with this kind of stuff, but where it, even not achieving the right state of sleep changes how your body burns fat versus actually burns muscle. Instead, you could do nothing other than have a bad sleep, and instead of burning off fat, your body's using muscle for energy, which
mhm.
is, these are astounding, you know, discoveries in terms of sleep and sleep performance and human performance related to sleep. So we always want to try and improve people's sleep, and we do that. Well, you're gonna kind of get a chuckle out of it. Well, we use a tea, of course. There's a tea.
Perfect. A good tasting
I'm
one.
not. No, I'm not. I'm not sitting here to talk about our various products, but it became apparent through my own experience, working night shifts and a lot of night shifts, particularly when I was a canine officer, you work mostly nights because bad guys generally don't run around in the day. And
Mm-hmm.
so my sleep was just horrible, like horrible. I would get home off shift 5 in the morning. I might sleep till 8:30 in the morning, and I would just beg any, anything I could do to try and optimize my sleep. So at least going into night shift, I didn't feel like I was impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I worked with a trainer whose main focus was sleep, and he just gave me a kind of a list of all of these different kinds of supplements. Some worked for me, some didn't, and but are all very good at creating that sleep environment. And then he also gave me what we now call the shutdown sequence, and I employ that religiously. And that's just a sort of activities, setting yourself up for good sleep every night. And
Mm-hmm.
so we do things like eliminate blue light, certainly from any room. We don't have, excessive intellectual stimulation prior, a couple hours prior to bed. So, in fact, what I will do, I have that shutdown sequence, and I'll make sure and send that over to you so
Perfect.
your listeners can download it from somewhere on your site for sure.
Sure. That'd be great.
It's just a good practice, and it doesn't cost you anything to adhere to a good shutdown sequence before sleeping. And then inside that, I include various different supplements. Magnesium's so good for sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Magnolia bark's another one. But I put it all in a short little manual that your listeners can grab for sure.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I can put that in the show notes. What I think has happened with this sleep, I mean, we're becoming very smart about it now, but you go back to the 80s and the 90s and where it all started, I'm not exactly sure, but it was almost virtuous not to sleep.
Oh yeah.
It was almost like I only need 5 hours of sleep. I can function just fine. I can burn both candles at both ends, no big deal. We'll look at our health crisis. We're in a crisis in this country because I think the sleep is the biggest factor
Yeah.
there. I mean, there's lots of factors, but
I could just ramble on forever about the actual impact, both from my own experience, but being in the policing community, and certainly, they're getting beat up in the press right now.
yeah.
Some very justified, and others not even close. But
Mm-hmm.
what I would say to people, that are pretty hard on, it's, you see a lot of policemen and women completely out of shape. But I would ask people to try and run their schedule for 5 years, let alone 30, and
Mm-hmm.
see, without being absolutely religious about your health and sleep, see what it does to your ability to stay healthy. It is a form of slow torture,
Yeah.
really working night shifts, and particularly in your later years. It's very, very difficult. And there have been excessive numbers of studies to try and improve scheduling. Nurses are another one. Oh my Lord, my heart
Mm-hmm.
goes out to these men and women who are in these nursing schedules, that'll do 7 days of nights, and
Mm-hmm.
2-day turnaround and come back and do 5 days, because there's just, there's not enough nurses out there. Even ER type physicians, it's just, it wreaks absolute havoc on your body to be sleepless.
It does. And I had a little understanding, insight into that when I was in college. I was working 30 to 40 hours a week, taking, very difficult courses in college. And I thought I had a few jobs, but then with this one job, there was an opening. I was working as a CNA in a nursing home, which is a very difficult job in and of itself.
Yeah.
But so I decided that it would be really good if I did the weekend night shift. So Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. because then I could have all those hours in just a weekend, and I wouldn't have to worry about the studying situation during the week, and I could just focus on class. So that was my rationale. So I did that, and within months, I felt like I had the flu all the time. Like the nauseousness, the fever,
Oh,
the like I thought, but I felt like such a loser, honestly, that I couldn't handle that. But physically, I was sick from it. I was
oh,
sick, and it was just 3 shifts every weekend. That was
yeah.
it.
We call it, it's a hangover. It really
It's
is. It's the
awful.
most disgusting feeling coming on, your first day off. And I remember, we had a rule in our house, and because both of us were on the job, we really understood it very well. But your
Hmm.
first day off, you got anything you wanted. Didn't matter, like, because you always would, to maximize your time off, you come off night shift, and that technically would be your first day. So you just
Hmm.
have a quick nap to try and, turn your circadian rhythm around, and
Hmm.
enjoy your family and friends. But you got whatever you want. If you just want to lay on the couch and watch a movie, you got to do that. If you wanted
Yeah.
to go out for a special meal, you got to do that. So first day off was absolute sacred around our house, because it's
Hmm.
just so painful, and the
Yeah.
work over.
Help to restore a little bit. But yeah, I was just dumbfounded that I felt that sick. I think it happened after the first 2 weeks, 2 weekend shifts, where I was like, oh, I don't feel good. So Sunday morning, I'm done at 6 a.m. And then I had class, or I should say Monday morning, and
Yeah.
then class again right at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm doing, pathogenic microbiology lab or
Oh yeah.
something like that. And I'm in practically a coma doing, I don't know. It's just crazy. But that was my first real insight into the impact of sleep. Now, have I done anything about it until, the last few months, like really hardcore, specifically dealing with sleep? And
Yeah.
because I thought it had kind of normalized after some of my thyroid stuff. But yeah, absolutely the number one thing you should be working on. If you can't handle one other thing right now, people,
Yeah.
start for focusing on your sleep.
You know what? Here's the interesting thing. Even if people are doing a weight loss program or whatever, and it's not working, it's not going so well, focus on your sleep. Do a good shutdown sequence. Turn off your phone. Get out of your room. All of that kind of stuff. You want to see your program light up, and you suddenly get results. it
Hmm.
it will shock you
Yeah.
how good it is. But yeah, it's a critical component to health. Like, we put that as kind of, it's one of our three pillars, but it's the one we focus on the heaviest.
Yeah, it's definitely key, critical to optimizing our health for sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to touch on that we haven't gotten into that you want to talk about with Pure Life Organics, or anything else you talked about?
No, I think we covered the critical components. If I could encourage people to just spend, a couple, maybe as far as nutrition is going, take 2 weeks of your life and just track what it is you're eating and drinking over that 2 weeks. And then, if there's not somebody to help you, just seek somebody to say, hey, like, I don't feel great about myself on a psychological level, or just I'm constantly in physical turmoil. Then at least do that for yourself. At least focus on fixing your sleep. And I think, the power that has to improve the quality of people's lives is a very good starting point for sure.
Great. Sounds great. Well, I'll have that shutdown sequence in the show notes when I get that. And then people can reach out to you at purelifeorganics.com. Check out that tea. That
Yeah,
sounds amazing. And I'd love to have you back for further conversations sometime. I feel like there's lots of things we could have touched on even further. So maybe some other time too.
for sure. Thanks so much,
All
Tiffany.
right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.